Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Red Planet Live. I am your host, Ashton Zeth. I'm elated to be hosting the Mars Society's podcast and leading the conversation about human exploration of the universe and the future settlement of Mars. As a longtime space enthusiast, I am passionate about STEM education and making humanity an interplanetary species. So thank you, everybody, for joining today and supporting the Red Planet Live. Now, before I introduce today's guest, just wanted to do two quick reminders about the Mars Society. So if you were unable to attend the recent Mars Society convention, or you want to re-listen to some presentations, the plenary speakers, don't worry, we will be uploading those to YouTube so that you can rewatch all of those. In the process right now of getting those edited and uploaded to the YouTube page, so stay tuned for that. Next announcement, if you have been thinking about wanting to walk on the surface of Mars or maybe visiting other planets, you want to know what that feels like, we are still accepting applications for crew members at MDRS for next year. So if you're interested in doing an analog mission at MDRS, go to our website, mdrs.marssociety.org, and fill out that application so that you too could have an opportunity to experience being an astronaut on Mars. All right, shifting gears. So for today, this episode is focused on education, and we have two educators today. The first person we're going to introduce here is Nicole Willet, who has been the driving force behind Mars Society's education initiatives since 2012. She is a passionate advocate for science and space education. She has been focusing on promoting human exploration of Mars and organizing engineering design competition for high school students worldwide. In addition, Nicole is currently working on developing a comprehensive Mars curriculum for K through 12 students. Hey, Nicole, thanks for joining me today.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here. I can't wait to talk about all the exciting things we have going.
We're about to dive right in. And next up, our other guest today is Jen Carver-Hunter, who is a veteran fifth grade teacher at Mountain View Elementary School in Salt Lake City. She serves as a master teacher and crew commander with the NASA Spaceward Bound Utah program, which involves teachers in analog studies and STEM research initiatives at the Mars Research Station. Also, this is really cool, in 2020, Jen was awarded the Presidential Award for Excellence in Mathematics and Science Teaching. How cool. Thank you, Jen, for joining. I'm so excited to chat with you as well.
Thank you. I am thrilled to be here.
Well, on the Red Planet Live, we always have a little segment to kick off our conversation. Again, you've heard me say this before. There's no right or wrong answers. It's just to get our conversation going. And because you are both educators, I figured today's question was relevant to both of you. So for today, our question is, in your life, has there been a teacher, or maybe not just a teacher, but a person who was influential in guiding your career path? Give you a second to think about it. Has there been somebody that was influential, maybe a teacher that influenced you in your career path? Nicole, I see a head shake. Do you have somebody in mind?
Yes, my 8th grade biology teacher, Bill Bratberg, and I don't know if he's still teaching. He was a great inspiration. He was a wonderful mentor, and he really helped me pursue the sciences.
I love it. Okay, great. There we go. Jen, what about you? Was there a teacher that influenced you?
Yeah, actually, I had several teachers who I just thought were wonderful. But my high school Spanish teacher is one that just kept pulling me back. And she just kept making me think that maybe I needed to be in the classroom. And so I actually initially became a high school Spanish teacher because of her influence.
I love it. Okay, keeping the tradition going. So your Spanish must be pretty good.
Yes, it is pretty good.
See, I'd say, for myself personally, I have a double answer here. One and the same. My mom, she was a teacher, so she was influential, obviously, as a parent, but also as a teacher. She always told me to pursue my education, the value of education. Education is power. And more recently, she has encouraged me to pursue my education at the next level. So, thank you, Mom. All right. We have a whole 55 minutes. We're going to jump right in. And there's a lot of questions I have for both of you. So wanted to remind everybody, if you have a question for Nicole or Jen, put those in the chat. We'll try to get those sprinkled throughout the conversation today. But my first question, which kind of ties into question of the day, but was, what inspired you to be an educator? Sounds like there was a person, but what about teaching was something you wanted to pursue? other than, you had somebody that influenced that decision, but what about teaching drew you to that career?
For myself, I would say I loved teaching my own kids. I had my own kids before I became a teacher. I had a different
Mhm.
career before. And they inspired me because seeing their eyes light up when I would tell them something really cool and, they were eager to learn, that really influenced my decision to go into teaching full time.
Okay.
And being once, I was in the classroom, seeing students who got it and were excited and intellectually curious,
Mhm.
that really kept me in that field for a long time.
Yeah. I love that. Seeing the spark in their eyes when they're intrigued by something. Jen, what about you?
I come from a long line of accountants, and I actually had no interest in being a teacher ever, and really fought against it. People would say, "What are you going to do with a Spanish degree? Are you going to be a teacher?" And I would say, "No, I'm not going to be a teacher." But I loved babysitting kids. I loved coaching youth softball teams, and had so much fun with that I finally just could not deny the fact that I was meant to be working with young people. And then once I realized that sparks came when you were teaching actual content,
Mhm.
kind of like Nicole said, I was hooked. And there is no high like chasing that every day.
Oh, I
Yeah,
love that.
agree. Yep, agree completely.
I'm sure if we asked some students, what inspired you to pursue STEM, pursue exploration of the universe, there's some students out there that would say both of you. So I love that you guys are feeling the spark and it's fueling your career. So you just know that you're making an impact on those others. I would be curious, though, specifically about Mars and space exploration. What about that topic? What about specifically about human exploration of the universe and on Mars? Why did you decide to focus on that in your educational initiatives, both inside and outside of the classroom?
My story, I read the 1988 National Geographic Mission to Mars article. I was a senior in high school,
Mhm.
and I was hooked. From the second I read that, I could not stop thinking about it. Everybody thought, "She's gone crazy." Like, "Why is she talking about Mars?" And then soon after, I discovered Dr. Robert Zubrin's work through some set of circumstances, and I just followed the Mars Society kind of behind the scenes, and I saw, the 25th anniversary of the Star Trek original series had like a documentary on the 25th anniversary. And I
Mhm.
remember watching that and saying, I can do that for a job. I can learn science and do that for a job. And I immediately registered for astronomy classes and all the sciences I could find. And then I became a teacher, and fast forward to 2012, I saw a call for volunteers on Facebook for the Mars Society convention. And that's the one where we had Elon Musk as our keynote,
Mhm.
and Buzz Aldrin was there. And I was just hooked from that moment on. Like, I'm like, there's no going back. It changed the trajectory, and I've been involved with the Mars Society and the education program ever since.
I love it. We're going to touch on that in just a second, your involvement with the Mars Society. Jen, what about you? Why did you decide to specifically focus on human exploration of the universe, about Mars? Why is that part of your curriculum, both inside and outside of class?
So I actually, unlike Nicole, I was very science averse due to some pretty rough experiences with science in elementary school. So by the time I became a teacher, I avoided science at all costs. And
Mm.
about 10 years ago, I realized that I was doing a real disservice for my students. I work in a Title I school, so a large population in my school are refugee students. I have students who are economically disadvantaged, and so we were focusing so much on language arts and math, But they love science, and they just didn't get any experience with that. So I started pulling science into the classroom, and I would have to spend the weekends doing hands-on science at my kitchen table to figure it out so I could teach them. And it worked so well, and they were so engaged that kind of started, okay, I need to look and see, which gave me a little bit of confidence when I saw the initial posting for the first Spaceward Bound Utah program, and decided to just send an email. After I was accepted, I was hooked. And especially because in Utah, we have a huge part of our fifth grade science curriculum is Earth surface. So with my students, I get to use Mars as an analog, which is a mirror of actually going to MDRS as an analog astronaut. So I get to take my students beyond what they learn about Earth's surface to applying it to Mars. And the level of engagement is off the charts, and as well as the fact that the way my students are able to apply the knowledge mimics real world experience for the actual researchers who go to MDRS.
Love that there's a connection there. And we're going to talk about MDRS and your experience there. But Nicole, you were mentioning in 2012, you saw that Elon and it was the keynote speaker and Buzz was there and you're like, okay, I'm hooked. How do I get involved? I want to be a part of this. And in the introduction, I mentioned that you're also a part of the engineering design competition for high school students. Can you tell us about that program and what impact do you see on that program? How is that impacting some of those students across the globe?
So Robert Zubrin, Dr. Zubrin, came up with this plan 3.5 years ago or so, because when he had engineering in his graduate studies, they had these classes where it was a design class where you had to design something, present it, then someone else critiqued it, and then you defended it. So the whole the engineering design contest is to design a human mission to Mars. There are certain parameters, each 5 or 6 person team, and these students come from all around the world. It's a virtual program, so we have scientists from NASA, private organizations, private companies Zoom in and give a 30-minute lecture to the students over a 2-week period. Then the students design their project, human mission to Mars, 30 metric ton limit. They have to write a 25-page paper with referencing like real science papers, not junk science, not Wikipedia. And then they present their design. And so it's human factors, science, and engineering. So they have to have different, what happens to the psychological effects of a human on a 6-month journey there, an 18-month stay, and hopefully a 6-month journey back. What happens? Who's going to be in charge? Who's going to make decisions? How are the human factors going to work? The engineering, what type of habitat are they going to build? Are they going to bring an inflatable one? Are they going to bring a prefabricated habitat? Are they going to make a 3D printed habitat? So they have all these different options and they have to come up with it. Rovers, how far is their rover going to go? What type of power source? And on and on and on. So they have to figure out, how can humans live on Mars for 18 months and survive with all of these factors? Then they present. Each team has 30 minutes to present. Then 2 days later, they get critiqued by all the other teams for 30 minutes. Then they take those critiques and then they defend them at the end of the contest. And I put out calls for people to grade. Dr. Zubrin grades them, I grade them. And then people with at least a master's or PhD grade these papers, and they give their critiques. And then that gets tabulated, and then we have a winner. First place for overall engineering, human factors, et cetera. And some of the students really go deep into this program, and it inspires them to follow, STEM, aeronautical engineering, physics, astronomy degrees in their, undergraduate, graduate work. So that is still, the pipeline is still happening. So we don't have, that none of them have PhDs yet because it hasn't been long enough. But I think some of these top tier students that did the best work, who were really deeply invested in this program, are going to follow those careers. And it's beautiful because I still have contact with many of them. And some of them from the first couple of years have been mentors to the students in the following years. So that's beautiful to see as well.
Yeah, that's really cool. Like it comes full circle. I'm curious, Nicole, do you know, have there been any students that have participated in the design program that have gone on to participate in the University Rover Challenge?
I don't think if they may be freshmen or sophomores in college, but I don't know for sure. None of them have told me that directly, but if I find out, I'll let you know,
Okay.
because it is kind of a direct pipeline into that.
Yeah, I think we should highlight that, just showing that like those students participated, they're still interested, they've fueled that curiosity, that desire to participate in STEM. So it would be really cool to see if there was any of the high school students that went on to the University Rover Challenge.
Yeah, I will definitely check with Kevin.
I love it. Well, University Rover Challenge, we know is held at MDRS every year. Speaking of MDRS, Jen, if you wouldn't mind talking a little bit about the Spaceward Bound program in Utah. What is it? What's its purpose? And what has been your role with the program?
Okay. Spaceward Bound Utah is a NASA-funded program that brings a small group of 6 or 7 teachers to the Mars Desert Research Station for a week-long professional development. And the normal or regular crews at MDRS have the objectives of science and sim. We add the objective of education because it is a professional development experience. So our crews come in, do our training, and we talk a little bit about how we want to focus our experience. And it usually does turn out to be a pretty nice balance of having the simulation experience. So we usually get about a 2-day long simulation, as well as having a science experiment or some research that we do with science. And then, of course, the education piece being the education we work with each other as mostly middle school and high school teachers, and what we are going to be able to take back to classrooms as well as to other teachers in the state of Utah. Because that's another important piece of it, is outreach from the program into especially rural schools, middle schools in Utah, so that we can get materials, we can get lesson plans, potentially some curriculum down the road, so that they will be able to replicate some part of the experience that we have at MDRS in their own classrooms.
That's really cool. And I know we had on last episode, Jonathan Nalder, who is a Mars Society ambassador. He went through the Spaceward Bound program as well, right?
Yes, he did.
Excellent. That's pretty cool. And so the teachers, are they from around the globe? They're not just US based, or they're not just in Utah, but you can have teachers from around the world that participate?
Yeah, the grant was written with a focus on teachers from Utah. So the large number of teachers does tend to be from Utah, but every crew has had a couple teachers from outside of the state, and we have even had Jonathan from Australia. So we're international at this point.
Jonathan, if you're listening, we're giving you a shout out right now. Thanks for participating last episode. So I'm curious. I mean, we've talked about, teaching high school students. We've talked about a little bit of some of the college. Jen, you're talking about educating other teachers. How do you get kids interested in STEM and in science? I mean, math is hard. Science is hard, especially when you're getting started and that spark hasn't come yet. How do you get kids interested in pursuing science?
Can I just say something to Jen real quick?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Somebody's doing a private chat. I don't know what that's about.
Okay.
She was mentioning a curriculum down the line. That's a great segue into the curriculum I'm developing. So if you're looking for a curriculum, I am piloting a program with a bunch of hands-on projects. Send me an email after this and I will send you all the files. They're all in PDF forms. It's a pilot program, so it's not perfect yet, but I am looking for teachers to try this out. I've got about 15 teachers or so right now trying it out across the US, and I would love to have your input and any teachers that would like a copy of that.
I would love that.
Yeah. So, and it's all hands-on. Build a rover, build a habitat, all kinds of different cool stuff. marshmallows for the little kids.
Well, I know that we have Jonathan on who is listening in, and he's also a teacher. So maybe we need to share that information with Jonathan.
I'm meeting with him tomorrow.
Beautiful. Look at what we just
which we thought was today, but Australia or we got it mixed up. We're meeting. But to answer your question, how do I get students excited? Hands-on and real information, not here's the textbook. It's blah, blah, blah. Here's all the vocabulary. That's not interesting. It's boring. Kids want information. They want cool stuff. They want to build stuff, touch stuff. I've created so many, because I taught all different sciences for many years. And I created a lot of hands-on stuff because there wasn't a lot of that available unless it was like super expensive. And it's like, no, I can create that out of cardboard and paper and tape. Let's make this thing. And so they want to get their hands dirty. They want to do things with their hands. And now they're so on these tablets and computers constantly in these classrooms. And I'm a hands-on paper pencil type of person. Like, you have to cut up with the scissors, build it, see it go from a piece of paper to a Mars habitat, and that you created that. You started it, you thought about it, and you made something, and you see the outcome, and it was successful. That's, to me, how I have seen students get really excited.
I would agree with that as well. That was one of the things I remember about school. In my 8th grade science class, Mr. Cummings, we did Scotland Yard, and being able to test different chemicals and how they reacted to different things. That was something that always stuck in my mind. So I totally agree with you, Nicole. Whatever you can get your hands on, if you get to see it, you get to experiment with it yourself, that's going to have a much more lasting impact than just read the textbook. Jen, what about you? How do you get kids interested in science?
I definitely think I would agree with Nicole. The hands-on is key, but I find that STEM really is the great equalizer. And like I mentioned, my population is very diverse. I have students who actually speak very, very limited English, and traditionally language-heavy classes like science, where it's like, here, read the textbook, would not be successful. Fortunately, and I work in an elementary school kids are curious, and curiosity is the ultimate driver with STEM education. So if we can just give kids an opportunity to think, to ask questions, they're going to fly with that. That's what they want to do anyway. They want to know, they want to build, they want to figure things out. And so because of that, it's the question isn't how do you get kids engaged? It's how do you get them from getting so engaged that it takes it like completely encompasses your entire world, and you can't manage to go to lunch or to find time to do other things like reading and writing.
How do you tackle that language barrier then? If English is not their first language and they don't have that language communication, how do you teach them? How do you portray that information? And, is it something tangible? Is it something physical? So maybe that kind of crosses the bridge between language. How do you bridge that gap with language?
Absolutely. Those are two of the strategies, is having something actually tangible and them being able to see and feel and build. And as far as communicating, like we work, so we do science communication, we do construct arguments, but sometimes my students who are more limited are doing so with a visual. Like they might create a more of a comic strip style, some way of displaying the information that they want to get across. And I've had students who have been considered emergent language speakers and writers who actually have been able to convey really deep, complex thinking by giving other modalities and for doing that. But I do think the big thing, and the teamwork, them being able to work with other students, the more students are able to work with each other, they're able to build a communication that isn't necessarily verbal. And it just really is beautiful when I watch that community come together to support all the students, even the ones who maybe have disabilities, or students who maybe don't have the language background of their peers.
That's got to be a challenge, but one that must be rewarding. Once you see them working together, they're building something together. It doesn't matter if they speak the same language or not. They're unified by a curiosity and an interest in science. So that's got to be really exciting.
Absolutely.
Nicole, I wanted to ask you about your other association and help with the Mars Society. So obviously you're in the process of developing that curriculum, but can you talk a little bit about some of the other things that you've done with the Mars Society? I know there's been some challenges and some successes in promoting science and space education, but can you talk a little bit about those things? You've done the engineering program, you're working on curriculum. What else are you doing with the Mars Society?
So a bunch of different things. I have my
I know.
notes. I hope I remember all of them. I think that getting youth out on social media as far as promoting Mars education with younger faces is really important because they're going to be the ones that go to Mars. So I have a volunteer right now who's making some TikTok content for Mars education. And so that's being posted on Let's Learn About Mars Facebook page, which is the Mars Society's education Facebook page. So that's wonderful. Shreya, she was actually in the engineering design program. So it's great that she is continuing to help with this. And Wallow Books is a program from India. It's this wonderful organization that is trying to reach as many, especially underserved communities that don't have a lot of economic resources to have good supplies in their classrooms. So they are taking a piece of paper and one piece of paper, and they have these instructions, this little notebook. And I'm designing with them this Mars rover program. So every student in this program can reach millions of students for $1 a student a year. And it's Wallow Books. You can look it up. It's great. They have different subjects. And they're going to learn about a scientist and learn about a rover. And then they have to build a rover out of a sheet of paper. And a couple of other rovers are a little more complicated than a paper plane, but a couple other supplies in the classroom. And it's an amazing program. And it's capable of reaching even 1 billion kids, I would say, because it's so easily accessible. You can download the PDF, a teacher can print it, and every student has paper, right? I hope every student has paper, even if it's a side of a cardboard box. They can still use it to make a rover. I'm an upcycled material teacher because I taught environmental science for many years. And so I'm like, use what you have. Amazon delivered a box. Let's use that to make something. So that is another program I'm working with. I'm working with a bunch of different students with their astronomy and physics after school programs to do the engineering design project this school year through their after school program. So I have several students I'm talking to about helping their group start that program. I already talked about the pilot program. So for any teacher out there that's watching this replay or homeschool parent or any astronomy club of any kind who wants to use the curriculum that I'm piloting, just email me, Nicole W. at marssociety.org. I'm sure it'll be down below because I need feedback for this, and I've got some good stuff in there. What else do I have?
Is there a goal? Do you have I want to get it out to 20 teachers?
I hope it'd be great to have 50 people signed up, 50 teachers, and if half of them give me feedback, because teachers get busy and they do the project and then they forget about the feedback because they've got grading and this and that and all this stuff. So I hope that I get feedback from 25 teachers that try a variety of the different projects, because there's a bunch of different projects. Build a marshmallow, which I love, which is really cool for the little kids. That's one of the activities. And the students take a jumbo marshmallow. I made this up when I used to run a science night for a decade at a high school. And the little kids from the feeder schools would come in, the little brothers and sisters of the high school students. And I have a paper plate, orange dry Jello powder, a jumbo marshmallow, and a squirt bottle, and a stir stick from a coffee stir stick or a straw or something.
Mhm.
The little kids squirt the marshmallow and they turn it into a sphere. So they learn that the shape of a planet is a sphere. And
Okay.
then they roll the wet, gooey, sticky marshmallow in the orange Jello powder, and it looks like Mars. And then they put it on a stick and they have a little treat. So, so for like kindergarten through second grade or preschool, even that's you're learning what Mars is. It's a planet. It's a sphere. I love it. It's one of my little favorite little activities to do with the little kids. Some of the other things, build a Mars rover. There's 2 tiers to that where they can order a kit if they have, an RC kit, or they can build it from scratch from upcycled materials. Build a Mars yard and have a competition like URC. So it's kind of goes right into URC. So you build it in high school, you build one in college, even fancier. Building a habitat, there's different tiers of that in the curriculum. The engineering design contest, I could go on and on and on. There's like 20 different options for different projects, and they're all hands-on. And I do have the standards. So don't worry if you want the curriculum, the standards are in there. Let's see. Oh, in-person cohorts. I just got back from Los Angeles where I did an in-person cohort with the engineering design contest with a group of students from China who came here for the program. We were at USC. And so you were talking about the language barrier earlier. It was interesting because there was a huge language barrier with these students, but all of the hands-on, just like Jen said, they didn't need me to explain much because they knew, okay, build a habitat, make a house, build a rover, and they had the kit. But it also, that besides the teamwork, which I love that point, Jen, leadership skills. There's always someone in the group that takes the leadership role naturally. And I love that because that leadership skill will go with them forever. And I tell my students, you don't have to love science. You don't have to become an astronaut or an engineer, but be passionate about something. Anything. Pick what you're passionate about and be passionate about it and really follow that through. Unless it's just making TikToks forever. Be passionate about something that's gonna last for your life. If I think of anything else, and I also did an in-person cohort with 15 engineering teams last spring at a school in San Mateo, California. So that was really cool for the design contest. And Dr. Zubrin came to the school and spoke to the students. And that was a big, awesome project that we did.
How do you do it all? I mean, you've got 20 projects that you're working on. How do you manage it all?
My kids are grown.
Okay, that helps, sure.
And I love it so much that it's not like it's not stressful like just going to a job that you wouldn't want to go to. I love doing this. I've been passionate about it for a very long time. Yeah. And I'm really passionate about helping the younger generation realize, oh, I talked to a woman in college who didn't know we had an international space station, and she grew up in Florida. So we need science teachers to get the word out.
How do you tackle those type of scenarios? I mean, maybe it's a different type of conversation when they're young because they just haven't been exposed to that information. But maybe when you run into adults that are not familiar, they didn't know there's an international space station. How do you teach somebody that as an adult? How do you tackle those objections of somebody that just doesn't know that information yet?
I have compassion and empathy because I know not every school, first of all, has the resources to have a teacher in science, first of all, in science with a science background. And it's not really a young person's fault if they weren't taught this. Sure. So I don't get mad at them. I
Right.
just educate as much as I can in the moment
Hmm.
with the limit, if it's a 5-minute interaction or whatever. I try to give them the information and say, hey, you might want to, check it out. And then I saw her on her phone looking it up a couple of minutes later. So
Little spark right there. You saw a little
yeah,
spark there. Jen,
exactly.
do you ever encounter that? I mean, obviously with children, teaching them new concepts in science, but do you ever have certain interactions or encounter people that are not familiar with what's happening on Mars? Maybe they don't know that there's rovers. Maybe they don't know that about an international space station. Do you ever have those type of interactions, and how do you tackle that?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, that's obviously very common with elementary schools. Like even
Sure.
my students, when I go to MDRS, they literally think I'm going for Mars, and they have no
Mhm.
concept that that would not happen in a week.
Hmm.
But I think the big thing is sometimes other teachers you might be working with, or parents of students, or even people in the community that have those misconceptions. And like Nicole said, it's you're constantly educated. I mean, we are educators, and so our like it just kind of is a thing where we try to educate. We don't try to educate our students by making them feel bad about what they don't know, but rather by inspiring them or getting them excited about what they don't know. And I think that that's what we do with adults as well. I think that really easy, there's really easy ways to get people excited, even just the ISS talking about the tracker app and being like, well, hey, go check this out. And then suddenly we're going to have someone looking it up, and they might be standing outside at 5 o'clock in the morning tomorrow watching the ISS
Mhm.
track across the sky. So I do think that that's one of the most beautiful things about educators is that we're just here to educate, and we don't care if you're short or 99. We just want to make sure that you have access to all the information, and the more information the better. So let's make that as comfortable of an environment as we can. And I think sometimes that's where there's a little bit of a breakdown sometimes when there are things with experts in the field who aren't necessarily educators, but they're experts. I think sometimes they do, there is a sense of shame if you don't know something, if you're part of an audience. And
Hmm.
so I guess I think everybody could learn a little bit from teachers on that.
Mhm.
100%. I agree with you there. Absolutely. There's been plenty of times where, even though I'm involved in the Mars Society, even though like I get to talk with experts, like there's a ton of things that I don't know. So, humbly I admit, hey, I don't know that. But everybody could, have a little bit more of an educator approach. Assume that, the audience that you're talking to doesn't know everything. But speaking of that, I'm curious, how do you both, as educators, you've done this a long time, you're experienced in teaching students, whether they're elementary, high school, college, whatever age, how do you stay up on education? How do you continue to learn new things? How do you stay fresh? Where do you find your information? How do you spark or fuel that own internal curiosity?
For me, luckily, I know Dr. Zubrin, and so I watch all his talks. That's
You've got a
first.
direct line to education. There you go.
Yeah. And all of the conference information. So I watch those. I read a ton of books. I love reading. I'm a big book person, like physical books. I have to have the physical book.
Mhm.
Um, Paying attention to, and my focus is Mars and astrobiology. So I'm mostly interested in keeping up on that as far as, new science stuff. So I subscribe to all of the NASA, astrobiology, NASA JPL, I get emails and I read through those. And I try to watch the news conferences when they have a big update on, I found water on Mars again. you
Yeah.
know, every 6 months they find water on Mars. So I try to stay up on Mars information in that way. And that's my in regular astronomy, I come across it. I don't know. It just shows up in my life.
Joe, what about you?
I think just kind of also building on what Nicole said, like educators also love education. So we're just constantly looking for ways to do that. I find that as I go through more and more years of teaching, I tend to find that in professional communities. So if there is a group of teachers who have the passion that I have, and we're coming together for a conference, there's a few groups I'm a part of where the ideas that I hear have actually encouraged me to become the much better teacher than I ever even would have dreamed possible. The things I'm able to bring to my classroom, I wouldn't even have tried if I hadn't heard somebody say, "Oh, I did this," and talk about what they did, and then I'm able to kind of imagine that in my head and start thinking how that can go, how I could do that would better meet the needs of my own students. So I just think professional communities and finding people with your passion
Mhm.
really are going to help push you beyond where you are.
Mm-hmm. So what would you say for, say, like myself? I'm an adult. I work a corporate job, but I'm interested in space. Do you have any resources or places that I could go to find information? I want to know more about Mars. I want to learn about sending humans there. How would humans survive? Where's a good place for me to go to learn more about Mars? Nicole, about astrobiology. Where can an adult go to get that information?
About Mars, marspedia.org. It's a Wikipedia for Mars.
Okay.
Um, and there's tons of articles there. So marspedia.org is a great resource. I've contributed several articles there, but so have other people.
Mhm.
So NASA.gov, I go on that website quite often. Looking up, I watched the YouTube because I don't always have time to read a full paper, so I take the shortcut, and I'll watch the YouTube videos, the ones from NASA, not the ones from UFOs and aliens.com or whatever, like actual scientists. I love to hear scientists talk about Mars, and I'm such a nerd, but I love it so much I could watch it all day long. So I read a lot about, on the NASA website. I subscribe to a lot of the NASA email lists, like I mentioned before. Um,
Mhm.
those are the things that off the top of my head that I would recommend.
I love it. Okay, well, you're in good company with like the nerd. It's all right. We're all nerding out here. Jen, what about you? What would you say if an adult wanted to go find more information? Where's a good resource for them to get that?
I definitely am going to emphasize exactly what Nicole said, but then I'm going to say, and how about you take a few field trips? So go to
Mhm,
the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum,
mhm.
spend a little time there, talk to some of the curators, the explainers, and then on your way back home, swing by Space Center Houston, and see some of their exhibits. I know they're building a new education facility that's going to have like a replica, some more Mars replica than what their Mars Yard does right now. But why not take a few field trips? Why not go see what is out there that's highly engaging, and also read the articles.
Yeah, and I second that about the Smithsonian for sure. Wonderful experience. Everyone should go there. ASU has a great. I think Ashton, were you there when we went to the little area where they had the rovers and all
Mhm.
of that? That was awesome. ASU, Houston. I just was at JPL. They have had a nice tour there. The California Science Center in Los Angeles is wonderful and has some really cool space stuff there. They're also building for the Space Shuttle Endeavour a whole new space section of the museum that'll be open in a year or two, and a George Lucas museum right down the street, by the way. But, but yeah, definitely field trips for sure, for sure, for sure.
I
Yes.
love that. That's such a good answer. That's not one that I immediately thought of, but that's so true. Earlier when I asked, who was a teacher that influenced you, and I said my mom. My mom was a teacher. She's not a teacher anymore, but she took me to the Air and Space Museum, the Smithsonian in DC when I was a kid, and I loved that. And that was a
Mhm.
memory that stuck with me. And getting to see the Mercury 7 and like the original Apollo mission stuff like that sparked, some curiosity in me as a kid. So I loved your answer about the field trips. I'm also a nerd. Again, so Nicole, you're in the
Good
safe
company.
space here. I went to Kennedy Space Center on my bachelorette trip. My girlfriends were such good sports, and they went with me, and they were, troopers to go to a museum on a bachelorette trip. But like when you're a nerd, that's the stuff that makes you happy. So
Mhm.
100% agree with the field trips. That's a great answer.
And Kennedy is wonderful. I actually enjoyed that more than JPL. There's much more. I didn't see any rockets at JPL. I
Okay.
saw tons of rock, as you know, at Kennedy. And I
Right.
live like I can see the SpaceX launches like every 3 nights in front of my house because I live in Central Florida. So
Yeah.
that's pretty cool.
You're in prime location.
Yeah.
Biosphere 2, where we went last year before the convention. That was a lot of fun to go to Biosphere. Another fun field trip. And they have a Mars yard there at the SAM now, which is also pretty cool. Well, I've asked a lot of my questions, and I want to make sure that I acknowledge some of the audience questions as well. So one question I see here is from Coach Willet. Maybe this is related to you, Nicole.
No.
Maybe not. It's just same last name. Maybe just coincidence. But the question is, what is your biggest goal in spreading your knowledge to young people about exploration and starting a Mars colony? I love that.
What is my biggest goal?
What is your biggest goal in spreading your knowledge to young people about exploration and starting a Mars colony?
That's my husband. I didn't.
We love a supportive husband.
He's wonderful. My biggest goal is that students have a working knowledge of Mars, regardless of if they're going to become a Martian or not. That they understand when they see on the news, and every student in the country and around the world, when they see on the news that a spaceship took off with people to Mars, they know where Mars is. They know at least that it's a rocky planet. They know why we're going to Mars, just a working knowledge, because I think a huge problem in this country and why there's a flat earth movement in 2024 is people just don't understand basic science. And my goal is everyone understand the basics. You don't have to be a scientist, but you should know that the planets are spheres. And you should know Mars is further from the sun and it's cold. It's not hot. I get so many students think Mars is so hot. I'm like, no. That may be a little much, but at least know where it's at. Know the planets orbit the sun in a certain way. Have the basic fundamental knowledge. And then from there, if a passion for that stems from that, great, wonderful. Continue down that trajectory. But when you're seeing things on TV and social media, you can determine, does this sound right?
Mm-hmm.
Does it sound right that Mars, you see this one every couple of years, is going to be bigger than the sun in the sky this week? Every couple of years that comes out, Mars is going to crash into the Earth. No, have enough knowledge to know that's not going to happen. That's not possible. That's my goal.
I think that's a good one. Jen, what about you? What's your goal in spreading your knowledge to young people about exploration and Mars colony?
I think that it is such a place for inspiration to start. My school is it's an inner city school. My students look around, they cannot imagine being any place where there aren't a bunch of other people. They can't imagine that there are things that are unexplored. So for them, the excitement of getting to do something new, of getting to go someplace nobody has ever gone, it's hugely invigorating and inspiring. And I think that that's like this, we are doing, real scientists are having the conversations that I'm having with them. As we're looking at Mars as an analog, that's what real scientists are doing. As we're trying to identify the best landing spots, that's what real scientists are doing. So they get to feel not like real scientists who have already done it, but like real scientists who want to do it and are going to do it. And that's what I want, is I want them to see themselves as scientists, and this is one step for them to do that.
I love that. That's such a good
Mhm.
answer.
Absolutely.
It makes me think, well, Jen, I wanted to ask you specifically about the award that I mentioned. So in 2020, you received the Presidential Award for Excellence in Mathematics and Science Teaching. Can you talk us through, how did that award come about? What was the process like? Talk us through that.
So that is that's an award that the National Science Foundation presents every year. They present the award to 100 teachers across the nation. And so you start with, you have to be nominated. So someone nominates you, and then you can choose to continue the application process at state level. And then there are finalists from each state level who then go to the national level, and those finalists at the national, you obviously have to continue the application process, but then from those finalists, it's about 2 winners per state are chosen each year, and they alternate elementary and high school, or elementary and secondary schools every year. So every other year, there's elementary teachers are chosen, and I was really lucky enough to be able to do it. And I'll tell you that my lesson that I did, it was during the COVID shutdown. We were doing a video lesson on Zoom, and my students were looking at Mars as an analog for Earth, and the stuff that they were doing completely blew my mind. So I can't imagine how any of the judges could have thought it was anything beyond amazing.
That's so special. I'm curious, do you guys keep in touch with, a lot of your students? And Nicole, I know you have, because you were mentioning some of the others that are pursuing other projects. But as a teacher, you're influencing students. Do you have students that you keep in touch with, and they're like, "Hey, I loved your class, and you were influential in my life and in my pursuit of education"? Do you keep in touch with a lot of those students?
I have a couple, and one comes to mind. He actually works at Kennedy Space Center. He was in my first year teaching astronomy in high school, and I'll never forget when he sent me an email and is like, "Can you write a letter of recommendation?" And he had already gone through college, and he's like, "I'm applying for a job at Kennedy," and he became an aeronautical engineer or something to that effect. I don't remember exactly, but he works at Kennedy, and I'm like, and what Jen said about this, really, it brought me to tears almost when you said, let every student know they can be a scientist too. That's key. Everyone has the ability. And I want to say it was Carl Sagan that said, everyone's born a scientist, but we beat it out of them. Like, we tell them, don't touch that bug. You'll get dirty. Don't play in the dirt. I'm like, you should play in the dirt. You should touch the bug, unless it's like a black widow or something. But, roly-polies, look at them, look at their legs, look at their eyes, frogs, catch a frog, check it out. Look how slimy it looks. Is it really slimy? Just let kids touch things and experiment with things. It's wonderful for them. And I grew up when I was a little kid in a small town, and I was always out in the woods and catching snakes and fishing and cutting the fish apart and looking at their eyeballs and what's in there. And like, I was always doing that kind of stuff. So kids need to get out in the dirt, in the woods, at the lake, whatever. They need to experiment and touch things.
I love it. I was going to make a joke there about, dissecting animals, but we'll leave that for another time. Jen, what do you think? Do you have students that you keep in touch with, and that you've seen them progress over the years, and do they have any that reach back out to you afterwards and say, "Hey, you influenced me"?
I do. I have students come back all the time, and I feel so lucky. I'm teaching at the same school. This is my 14th year at the same school, and I have students coming back. I had a student come help me Monday get ready for this upcoming school year. She was in my first class 14 years ago. So I'm actually starting to see children of my students come through the school as well. And hearing the ones come, the one thing I hear that breaks my heart is I have students come back and they say, "Miss Jen, you lied to us." And I'm like, whoa. I promise you I didn't. What did I do? And they said, "You said science was fun, and we got to middle school and all we did was read books and articles, and it was not fun." So I'm glad that we get to continue those conversations. I would love to see some things start to change at the middle school level, so we can have more of the hands-on. And I'm going to talk with Nicole about her program to see if I can start getting some of that in these teachers as well, because I don't want them just coming back to me to say that I lied. I want them coming back to me to tell me that they're working at NASA or something like that.
Yeah.
Well, I think you're going to have a few teacher signups after this.
Good. Because it is all hands-on stuff, and it's most of it you can do quite inexpensively. And there's especially schools in inner cities, like Jen said, they just don't have the resources to buy expensive, STEM kits. Like, you can do it without that. You can be a scientist without an expensive STEM kit.
That's a lesson to take away. You can do science without an expensive kit.
Yeah.
I see we have another question here. What do you tell students is why they should be excited about Mars? I think the question here is like when you're talking to your kids and your students, why is it important that we go to Mars? What is it that you tell them?
For the future of humanity. I wrote articles for the Mars Society for a long time, and my tagline at the end was humans to Mars as a bridge to the stars. If we want humanity to survive, it's not just going to stop at Mars. We have to learn to go to other planets. Proxima b is the closest planet to our solar system in another solar system. It's an Earth-like planet. If we can learn to go to Mars, we can learn to go to Proxima b. And now, should we spread humanity? That's an ethical question. That's another podcast. But to move forward in the future, the brightest future we can imagine with, the best intentions, humans to Mars as a bridge to the stars.
I love it. Jen, what do you think?
Yeah, I love that too. I think also with my kids, for them, I want them to know that we don't just stop with something we know how to do. We can always continue to push just a little bit farther. So we talk about going back to the moon, like we've done that, but we need to do that again. And then what's the next step beyond that? So if we're pushing our students to go a little bit beyond their own ability level, they need to see that modeled, not just at a teacher level, but also at a science level. And I think this is a great example of how that science is being modeled, that we are going to go beyond.
That's such a great answer. I think about when I'm an ambassador and I'm talking to students and I'm have the opportunity to go into K through 12 classes and talk about the Mars Society and why is Mars and space exploration important. Some of the things that I tell them are, all of these creations, all of these innovations, all these technologies that have come from the space industry that you may not know. I'm sure that, most kids nowadays, they all have a phone. And so trying to show them real life examples of the things that they use every day, that it comes from the space program, like your cell phone, like GPS, like cameras, water filtration, a fireman's suit, those type of things all come from the space program. So it's important for us to get to Mars for a lot of reasons, not just to get to Mars, but to get to other planets and out into the solar system. But it's going to have real life implication here on Earth, and it's going to affect all of us and hopefully benefit our lives, just like, your cell phone has. You've got information, everything at your hand. That's part of the reason why it's important that we explore the universe.
Yeah.
From a teacher's perspective, is that a good answer?
Yep. That's good.
Okay,
Yeah.
I have approval on that one then. Well, we're just about at the end of our conversation today, and I just wanted to ask both of you, what are you excited about? You're obviously working on a lot of projects. Jen, you just started. Today is your first day? Yeah, today's the first day of school, right?
Second day.
Okay. Both of you, what are you excited about? We're looking to the future. We're excited about obviously getting humans to Mars, but in your life right now, what's happening that you're excited about?
As far as Mars, I'm excited about it's going to happen. Watching the Starship launch, I was standing in front of my television crying during the last launch because I've been waiting for this since 1988. And so that it's really going to happen. We're really doing it. We're really moving in that direction, and it will inspire so many people, so many young people. And it gives me hope. And especially with my engineering students, it gives me hope for the future because there are so many brilliant kids. And it's like, oh, I can relax. They're going to take over and it's going to be good.
Jen, what are you excited about? What are you optimistic about in the future?
Two things I'm really excited about. One is I'm really excited to see humans go back to the moon. When that was happening, I was too young to really remember or care. So I'm really excited to live that in my life. The other thing I'm really excited about is more of a personal level. My son is going back to his second year of college tomorrow, and I'm really excited to see him go soar.
That's so exciting. I love the personal one there.
Can I add my personal?
Oh yeah, please.
I didn't even think about adding a personal one. I'm having a grandbaby. And I'm so excited in March. Yay.
Oh,
yay.
Right.
First grandbaby. So I'm so excited.
we got children going to school. We got grandchildren coming. That's so exciting. And I appreciate both of you. I was excited. I was looking forward to our conversation today. And it was a pleasure to speak with you both. Nicole, Jen, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and chatting with me today.
Thank you. I had a wonderful time.
Yes.
Learned a lot. It sounds like we're going to make some connections here. I think both of you should also consider becoming a Mars Society ambassador, because you pretty much are checking off all of those boxes already. So I'll email you about that afterwards. But want to just say again, thank you to both Nicole and Jen for joining. Thank you to our Liftport team, Michael and Leah. Thank you to James Burke, our executive director, Michael Stoltz, PR director. I'm going to close out today's show the same way we always do.